Every story you're about to hear is true, and every one of them ends with the same thought. I shouldn't have been there. My sister had an imaginary friend when she was little, and honestly, the story still gives me chills. She used to say this friend was a really kind older lady named E. They were inseparable, playing and talking all the time. But then, when my sister turned 4, E just vanished. Fast forward a few years. My sister's about 10 now. One afternoon, my mom and dad get a call and have to rush out to my grandpa's nursing home. It was an emergency. I was at one end of the house, and my sister was in our bedroom. Suddenly, the radio in our room just clicks on by itself. It blasts to full volume, then drops to 0, and then shuts off completely. It did this 3 times in a row. I was so annoyed, I stormed into the room to yell at her, but she was just sitting on her bed, pale as a ghost and totally frozen. I went to unplug the radio, thinking she was messing with me, but there was no plug. It didn't even have batteries. It was the only radio in the entire house. I turned to my sister, and she whispered, "It was E." I saw her. It was freaking out. I called my mom, and that's when she told us. Our grandpa had just passed away. A few days later at the funeral, a relative showed us an old photo she'd found. My sister stared at it and said, "That's her. That's E." It was a picture of my grandparents on their wedding day. My grandmother had passed away when my mom was just 11, long before any of us were born. We were living in the same house my mom grew up in, but there were no pictures of her anywhere. My step-grandmother had thrown them all out years ago. When I was 13, my grandmother was dying of cancer. During her final weeks, my mother and I stayed at her house to care for her. BT's point, my grandmother was completely bedridden and so weak she couldn't move on her own. One night, around 3 in the morning, my mother burst into my room and shook me awake. She was terrified. She told me my grandmother had just walked into her bedroom, woke her up, and then walked back out. At first, we weren't thinking about anything supernatural. We were just really worried. My grandmother was days away from passing and physically unable to walk. We both ran to her room as fast as we could. When we got there, we found she had passed away. In the shock and grief of that moment, we never talked about how strange the whole thing was. Life just went on. It wasn't until months, maybe even years later, that I finally brought it up and asked my mom about that night. She told me she had no memory of it at all. She doesn't remember telling me my grandmother walked into her room. She doesn't remember what woke her up. She doesn't even remember waking me. I still get chills just thinking about it. Whatever lived in our house stopped only after my mother spoke to it. When I was 8 years old, my family moved from urban South Florida to a tiny town in North Florida. It felt eerie from the start, like the setting of a horror novel. Over the next 15 years, a lot of strange things happened there, but nothing compares to what occurred when my sister moved back in with my parents. Her husband had been deployed to Afghanistan, leaving her alone with a newborn baby. Not wanting to raise her son by herself in a trailer deep in the woods, she decided to stay at my parents' house for a while. At first, it was small things. She said the headboard of her bed would slam violently for no reason. Then one night, she woke up because someone or something was tickling her. She brushed it off. Until one night she woke my mother by screaming. My sister was nearly 30 years old, not a child. When my mom rushed into the room, she saw the bed shaking violently, up and down, side to side like a boat caught in rough water. Despite everything, they endured it. But then one night, while my sister was nursing her baby, something grabbed her ponytail and yanked her head backward. That was the final straw. My mother stormed into the room and spoke firmly into the air, as if addressing an unseen presence. She said she understood that things had changed, that there was now a baby in the house, and that curiosity was natural. But she made one thing clear. They were not to be touched ever again. After that night, it stopped. I never met her grandma, but I think she noticed me. About a month ago, I went over to a friend's house. The moment I stepped into the living room, I felt deeply uneasy and unshakable sense of anxiety I couldn't explain. I later found out they had recently replaced a china cabinet with one that had belonged to her grandmother, who had passed away a few months earlier. Her grandmother had been bedridden in the hospital, and I had never met her. The entire time I was there, I felt anxious and strangely sad. especially when I was near that cabinet. When I mentioned it, my friend brushed it off and went to the bathroom. While she was gone, I walked closer to the cabinet. It was about 6 feet tall, made of dark wood, with glass doors in the front and a mirror lining the back. Inside were teacups and small baby dolls. As I was looking at them, I could have sworn I saw a figure in the mirror behind me. Just a silhouette. I called out to my friend and immediately heard a sharp, piercing scream from the bathroom. I ran to the door and started pounding on it. When it opened, she was sitting on the floor, crying. She told me she had seen someone in the bathroom mirror. We ran out of the house, no shoes, no jacket, straight to my car. I drove for over an hour with no destination, just trying to get away. When I finally brought her back, her mother was sitting on the front steps. She said she'd been seeing shadows moving inside the house. I was home alone, sick, and only 10 years old. And I didn't realize someone was watching me until I remembered the back door was unlocked. When I was around 10 or 11 years old, I got sick and stayed home from school one day. My parents both had to work and couldn't take the day off, so they told me to stay inside and not open the door for anyone. The usual stranger warnings. I was sitting in the living room watching TV. The room had a large bay window that faced a busy main road with a row of shops across the street. After a while, I felt uncomfortable with so many people walking past, so I partially closed the curtains. As I did, I noticed a man in his late 40s or early 50s, with a beard and glasses, wearing a green knitted jumper. There was something about him that felt off. I brushed it aside at first, until I saw him walk past again about 10 minutes later, in the same direction, as if he had looped around the block. 10 minutes after that, he appeared a third time. This time, he stopped at the edge of the driveway and stared at the window for around 30 seconds. Then he walked toward the front door, looking inside as he passed. The house was an old Victorian sandstone building, with heavy storm doors that could only be opened with a key. He knocked several times, but something in my gut told me not to answer. He then moved to the window, banging on the glass and saying something I couldn't make out. Suddenly, I saw a realization cross his face, like he had remembered something to bike door. My parents never locked it so the dog could come and go freely. I ran to the kitchen, and within seconds of turning the key and locking the door, the handle started moving. Then he began violently banging on it. I curled up on the floor, frozen in fear as he tried opening windows around the house. This went on for nearly 30 minutes, before he finally left. Even now, I dread to think what could have happened if I had Auntie remembered that the back door was unlocked.
Some stories don't end when the lights turn on. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.